Ancient Egypt was one of the most remarkable civilizations in history, known for its pyramids, temples, and mastery of the Nile River. But what happened when rain fell on this land that thrived in the desert? Could rare storms have brought blessings, or instead chaos? Did sudden downpours flood villages, destroy harvests, or even inspire religious meaning? And could these rare rains have shaped the way Egyptians viewed their gods and their environment? Understanding how they reacted to such an unusual event opens a window into the daily struggles and beliefs of a people who built one of the world's great civilizations. Egypt lay almost entirely within a desert climate. For thousands of years, annual rains scarcely touched much of the land. The Nile River, swelling each year with floods from East Africa, provided nearly all the water Egyptians depended upon. Crops grew because of the river's predictable cycles, not because of rainfall. In fact, most Egyptians lived their whole lives rarely seeing more than a few drops fall from the sky. For them, the idea of rain was not part of everyday life, but something unusual, even startling. Egypt's climate was hyper-arid, meaning that rain was extremely scarce. In many regions, it might not rain at all for several years in a row. Records from ancient settlements suggest that southern Egypt, particularly around Thebes, saw almost no rainfall, while the northern delta, closer to the Mediterranean Sea, occasionally received showers. Historians believe that when rain did come, it was not the gentle drizzle many of us imagine, but sudden, short bursts of heavy water. These localized storms often confused and frightened Egyptians, who lived in a world where the Nile dictated life, not the skies above. When it rained in ancient Egypt, it could be both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, rain falling on parched land might seem like heaven itself offering relief. It could water trees, refresh the air, and briefly cool the oppressive heat. On the other hand, heavy rain posed dangers. Without modern drainage or waterproof construction methods, Egyptian homes made of mudbrick quickly softened in downpours. Walls collapsed, streets filled with mud. Fields carefully prepared for the Nile flood could be disrupted by stormwater rushing across the soil. Archaeological evidence shows houses damaged by water erosion, hinting at the destruction storms could bring. For the Egyptians, powerful natural events were tied to the gods. The Nile flood was personified by the god Hapi, who brought dependable fertility each year. Rain, however, was not part of that tradition. Instead, stories suggest it was treated as foreign, even dangerous. Some gods associated with chaos, like Seth, were sometimes linked to storms and violent weather. Leading theories suggest Egyptians may have understood rainfall not as a gift, but as a disruption of the carefully balanced order of Ma'at, the principle of harmony that guided their world. Thus, when rainstorms arrived, they might have been interpreted as warnings, punishments, or signs of troubled cosmic balance. Historical clues about rain appear in texts and inscriptions. For example, literary works from the Middle Kingdom period mention storms with phrases describing water pouring from heaven or the sky opened. These were rare references, but important ones, because Egyptians otherwise rarely spoke of rain. In some cases, these texts described rain as fearful or destructive, equating it with disorder. Today, scholars believe that descriptions of great storms in Egyptian writings often reflected unusual real experiences rather than ordinary events. These accounts remind us of just how unexpected and memorable rainfall must have been for those who witnessed it. Egyptian architecture also reveals how ill-prepared the society was for rainfall. Most buildings were constructed from sun-dried mudbrick, a material strong in dry climates but vulnerable to water. When rain poured onto mudbrick structures, it softened them until walls collapsed in chunks. Temples built of stone resisted the damage better, but even they suffered erosion where water occasionally pooled. Archaeologists have found damage in ancient ruins that points directly to rainfall events, suggesting that storms left lasting marks on Egyptian cities. Unlike cultures in wetter climates, Egyptians did not develop roofing or waterproofing techniques, because rain was simply too rare to warrant preventative building practices. Agriculture in Egypt was a carefully managed system based around the Nile's flooding. When storms arrived outside that cycle, they could disrupt fields, wash away seeds, and damage irrigation canals. Farmers worked in harmony with the annual rhythm of the river, which they expected and relied upon. Rain, however, did not fit into this predictable pattern. Evidence tells us that occasional rainstorms might have drowned crops or pooled in irrigated channels, undoing a season's careful labor. This disruption made rainfall more of a threat than a blessing to Egypt's fragile agricultural balance. Modern studies of Egypt's climate provide further insight. Geologists examining layers of sediment and ancient mudbrick have identified traces of sudden wet periods. Some argue that a handful of short-lived climatic shifts brought more rain than usual, particularly around 1200 BC, when the late Bronze Age collapse shook the Mediterranean world. These studies show that while rainfall was never consistent in Egypt, rare surges could have created floods, damaged harvests, and contributed to wider societal challenges. Such evidence demonstrates that even the slightest deviation in weather posed risks for people living in such an arid region. For Egyptians, rainfall was often associated with places beyond their homeland. Travelers and soldiers who ventured north into the Levant or across the Mediterranean would have seen rain as a regular occurrence. In fact, evidence shows that Egyptian scribes sometimes referred to foreign lands as places where the sky poured water. This reinforced the idea that rain was not part of Egypt's order, but a characteristic of distant, alien environments. Such cultural perceptions remind us how differently ancient people experienced and interpreted something that most of us take for granted. Despite the destruction it could cause, rain also brought moments of awe. Egyptians who had never seen more than a drizzle may have regarded a storm as both terrifying and fascinating. The sound of thunder, rare flashes of lightning, and sheets of water falling from the sky must have created a spectacle unlike anything else in their lives. Historians believe people likely sought religious explanations for these experiences, turning to rituals or prayers to make sense of what seemed an extraordinary intrusion into the stability of the Egyptian world. Rain in ancient Egypt was a rare and powerful event that challenged the order of a society built on the rhythms of the Nile rather than the sky. It brought both destruction and wonder, damaging crops and buildings while stirring fear, awe, and religious interpretation. For us today, learning how Egyptians responded to rain provides an intimate glimpse into their lives, showing how even a few drops falling from the heavens could shake their world. What we see as ordinary weather was, for them, a reminder that nature held mysteries beyond their control, and that even the desert sky could surprise a civilization that once believed it understood the balance of the cosmos.